everyone. If we could get all councillors to the table, please. Is this public? Yes. Yes. Tim, your hair looks lovely, Diane. Okay, we're getting a bit silly now, so we'll just kind of like stop that there. I have Liam, but I believe Brad is going to be.
That's right, Madam Chair. So Brad Singh, thanks Brad. Just a quick recognition, this is, I think, the last time Brad's going to present to you all before he goes on his brand new role. And as you know, councillors, this is an update. It's an opportunity for you to just get an update on the progress of the Courtenay Place development, and Brad's here to answer all of your questions. I think the role, Brad, would be best. You've got about just over a dozen slides. Let's go through them all, hold on to questions, and then we'll. Thank you.
So I'll take a question list, but we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Over to you, Brad, and congratulations, and thank you for your mahi. So I appreciate your work on this as well. But over to you.
Cool. Thank you. Kia ora, councillors, and I appreciate those words. Yes, so today I'll be presenting an update on Courtenay Place and the Golden Mile project. Like Liam said, I'd appreciate it if we can get through the slides. There aren't that many of them. I'll try and fly through them as quickly as possible because I think that the greatest benefit of today's interaction will be the questions that you get to ask and the answers that get provided to you. I do have online Amy. Not yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here, Brad. Yep.
All right, cool. So Amy Hobbs is online joining me on this presentation. Amy Hobbs has been with this project pretty much from its inception. I do want to recognize her for the work that she's done over the years on this project. She is our design manager and has worked very much on the design of the project, but now has transitioned to project manager for the first work package, the stuff that's currently under construction on Kent and Cambridge, and she's currently project managing that. So Amy will be joining me today.
Thank you, Brad.
So really quickly, the purpose of today's session is to give you a bit of an update. The reason we're doing it is because you've asked for one. You've asked us to come through before elections and provide you an update on where the project's at and what we've been doing. We do want to have a shared understanding after today's session on the risks of this project and one, where the project is at and the risks associated with the project. And the main reason for that is because as part of our project plan, we are beginning stakeholder engagement. And before we start talking to the community, we need you to be on board with or be as up to date with where the project is at before we start talking to businesses in the community. At the end of today, I'd really like you to have a firm understanding of what our planned activity looks like as we head into the next few months, and to be aware of the risks that we're currently actively managing in the project. I thought I'd start with a little bit of a recap on the Golden Mile investment. Now, none of this on this slide is new. Everything is as per it always was. The main reason for providing this slide is because at times you've heard different numbers bandied around on the project, 139 mil, 116 mil. This is trying to give a bit of an understanding as to what those numbers mean and where those numbers sit. So the project, when it was with Let's Get Wellington Moving, was separated into three parts: the business case part, the pre-implementation, and the implementation. We're at implementation at the moment, which is essentially finish the design, get a contractor, start construction, and finish the construction. To do that work, the implementation work is 116 mil, so that's where you've heard the 116 mil figure from. But in addition to that, there's contingency within that 116 mil for construction, but there's also a further contingency that's available for this project that you've approved as well as NZTA. So there's $9.5 million worth of contingency, which is what we refer to as P95 contingency. That takes us up to the 139 mil total figure for all the different phases of the project. That 9.5 mil is not accessible to the project at any given time. It does require CEO release or board release at NZTA in order for us to access that 9.5 million contingency. So everything that we've been working with at this point in time has been according to the 116 mil that we have for implementation. That's the figure that we're generally talking about. In addition to that, the other funding that's been approved for this project is you've approved in the LTP, you've approved funding through the Three Waters assets and doing Three Waters renewals for this project, and I'll talk a bit about that through this presentation. And Greater Wellington have also contributed 100% of costs towards bus shelters at $6.5 million. So before we get into work package 2, which is the Courtney Place work and the larger piece of work that we're here to talk about today, I thought I'd give you a bit of an update as to where we're at with Kent and Cambridge. In terms of physical construction in Kent and Cambridge, we're over halfway there. Pretty much out of the ground now. So the bulk of the underground work is all done. We're now starting to do the cosmetics and put the lipstick on the beast. So it will start to look really good now. We are getting a lot of interest from passers-by as we start to lay new things down and the place starts to look differently. So far, we've spent just over 40% of the budget, and we're on track with the budget. We're not projecting any sort of budget blowout for that piece of work. Just to remind you, I think that's about a $5 million piece of work, $4 million piece of work that we're doing at Kent and Cambridge. Some of the things that we've learned from work package 1, one of the key risks of this project, and you'll see it and I'll talk about it throughout the project, is what's under the ground. Despite the numerous amount of potholing that we've done, despite the tremendous amount of work in trying to identify all the services underground, there's always a risk of stuff coming up that we never identified, and we have had that even in this intersection. At the moment, we're working with Wellington Water and the broader transport team, my broader transport team, to deal with a void that we found underground. So essentially a cavity of nothing that's under the ground. The size of the cavity is about 5 meters by 3 meters by half a meter, so pretty significant. But we've got plans as to how we're dealing with that and how we're going to manage that. And even with that, we're not going to go over budget. But these are some of the risks that you face when working in the city underground. So far, no major complaints from residents or businesses, just the usual construction type queries that we've been dealing with. Work package 2 is currently in negotiation, and I will deal with that towards the end of this presentation in terms of where that's at. I thought that I'd next give you a little bit of an update. Most of you have been to our design drops where we've spoken about the design of the project and where we were at with design. And through that, we've had some queries that have come through from councillors, and I thought I might give you a bit of an update on some of those queries that you've had in the past as to where we've gotten to. Can take questions at the end on any of these. The new authorization system for Courtney Place is still being worked on. We will have it ready in time once construction's all completed and done. That will mean that bus priority and authorized vehicles, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We wouldn't have restrictions outside that daytime period. So at night, there'll be no restrictions in vehicles being able to access Courtney Place. Emergency vehicles obviously are exempt from that. They can access Courtney Place at any given time. We're working with the parking team on new enforcement cameras to get some cameras in there to help enable the authorization system. And our traffic operations center, so just to give you a bit of background on this, our council has a TOC, which is a traffic operations center, fancy name for a control room where we can manage the traffic signals, CCTV cameras, and essentially manage the traffic throughout the city. In the region, we're the only city that still has a TOC. The other cities operate off NZTA's TOC. So our TOC has been heavily involved in looking at the design of the project to ensure that they are comfortable that nothing will create gridlock and that we'll be able to prioritize emergency management services through the city post-construction. There was an issue that was raised around the pedestrian safety at the pedestrian crossing of the Kenton-Cambridge intersection. We've closed that issue out with a safe system audit where we've had a look at it through a safe system audit, that particular query, and we've managed to close that out. Outside of this meeting, I'm happy to provide you with further detail on that in terms of how that was closed out and what we've done there. Bus shelters were a big question in previous design drops. We've now almost landed the final design for bus shelters. These have been designed specifically for our climate and our conditions. So we've done lots of wind modeling and lots of work on those bus shelters with angled positions of what we're calling fins. Those are essentially the side walls of the bus shelters. These are able to be moved should the modeling have prove wrong, and we think that we can that they need to be adjusted. We're able to adjust that. So just to give you a bit of an update, that we're pretty comfortable with where we've gotten to with bus shelters in terms of being able to provide adequate protection for people waiting for the bus. Three Waters investment. So council approved funding into the LTP for Wellington Water for us to be able to access that water investment with the mindset of dig once. So any water works or water renewals that needed to occur or any water infrastructure that needed to be upgraded, that we would do it through this project, thereby limiting the need to come back to the Golden Mile at a later stage to deal with water. We've been working very closely with Wellington Water on this. We've got our final list of them in terms of what we're doing and the water infrastructure that we need to resolve. At this stage, there's $8.3 million for Courtney Place that's been allocated to do water renewals. So we'll continue to work on that, but at this stage, we're fairly comfortable that we've got that under control. One of the big things that we have now started to raise as a bit of a work on that we'll need to deal with is the transition from Wellington Water to Metro Water, to the new water entity. This money has been allocated into Wellington Water's books, but the new water entity, we'll have to ensure that we keep communications with them and work with them and work on the transition to the new water entity, that this funding continues to be there for future work outside of this financial year. In order to identify what pipes we needed to work on, we started with a desktop analysis, similar to the must-do, should-do, could-do list of Thorn and Key, if you remember that. That desktop analysis then went on to advocate for further work that needed to be done in terms of pipe condition assessments. We've completed that with CCTV camera footage being undertaken across the entire length and breadth of Courtney Place, and we've identified which pipes need to be renewed, which pipes need to be upgraded, and have those programmed as part of the project. In terms of business support, there is work that we're doing to support local businesses in the area as we head into construction, and here now I'm starting to dovetail into, from an update perspective, into this is what we're starting to think about from construction. So we're looking at tailored advice and mentoring to support businesses through Wellington NZ, and that would include one-on-one meetings with them where we can meet with them and talk to them about what the construction is going to look like and understand what that construction would look like. Also understand what impact that would have on their businesses so that we can work on minimizing those impacts as much as possible within the construction environment. One of the things that we've heard is timely communication. It's a learning learning that came out of Thorn and Key as well is keeping businesses really informed, especially when things change through construction, because there's always changes in construction. It's been very clear with our communication as to what they can expect, and when that changes, that we're very timely in terms of communicating that back to them. There's also work that's been done around precinct support to support the broader Courtney Place area, looking at marketing events and holding some activations to try and support the area whilst we head into construction. And we're working very closely with our in-house team as well as Wellington NZ to deliver those sorts of things. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about what construction might look like and what you can expect to see, or what people can expect to see as we head through construction for work package 2, which is the broader Courtney Place work. We do have a contractor on board that's been hired in an ECI arrangement, an early contractor involvement arrangement, which means that the contractor's basically been with us from day one. Through the design, they've been with us through the design, they've been with us as we plan for construction, and they are likely to be the contractor that does the construction. I say likely to be because nothing prevents us from going out and finding another contractor to do the construction, but that comes with risk as well, and I'll talk a little bit about risk management a bit later. So some of the things that we're focusing on is there's a lot of trade-offs when you head into construction contracts and when you start doing physical construction of infrastructure. For horizontal infrastructure like roadworks and waterworks, the stuff that you're looking at is obviously the disruption factor and the impact that we're going to have on residents and the wider community and the businesses in the area, and managing the traffic around the area is part of that. But then you're also looking at how long it takes to do construction. The more we try to manage the impact to disruption and traffic disruption, the longer it takes to do the work and the more expensive it becomes. By identifying efficiencies in construction and identifying ways to do the project faster, we can save on cost, but that might mean a little bit more hurt from a disruption perspective over a shorter period of time. So these are the trade-offs that we're constantly trying to manage through the construction program. A timeframe, very high-level timeframe that is currently planned. This may change and is likely to change a little bit as we move through the project. But this is the current timeframe that we're operating on in terms of when we plan on starting works. Physical works construction will start in 2026, where we'll start to put a bus diversion in place to move buses off Courtney Place, and I'll talk a little bit about that bus diversion, I think, in the next slide. And then we start the actual physical works and physical construction, and I'll talk about what that will look like as we head into it. While we're in construction, there will be restricted vehicle access through Courtney Place. The restricted vehicle access will mirror very much what it would look like post-construction when we start implementing the traffic resolution that's been approved by council. And so we will have authorized vehicles only. At night, we'd still allow access to all vehicles, similar to what it's going to be like post-construction. We'll have loading zones during construction and mobility parking, and we're working through what that would look like and how we'll place those. There is a bus diversion, as I spoke previously. So the current plan is that westbound buses will be diverted onto Cambridge Terrace, then onto Wakefield and Taranaki, and then we'll take them back onto Manners. And that will then enable Courtney Place to be free. This is, again, us trying to manage the trade-offs between traffic disruption and efficiencies in construction. Having buses use Courtney Place while we're constructing would just cause the project to last a lot longer. It would increase the disruption to businesses and people in the area, and it would likely cost the project a lot more. We will be putting in temporary bus stops for that bus diversion. This is a typical example of what one of those temporary bus shelters and bus stops would look like. We'd have 2 shelters at each stop. They'll be kitted out as they need to be with lighting and appropriate accessibility ramps and all of that. We have used them in the past, and we've used them quite often, and they work pretty well as a solution. This is what you can expect to see at a very high level when we start construction. The initial stages will be preparation, so you might see a few pavers missing, you might see quite a few guys around in high vis, and some trucks and trailers and diggers and whatnot, but not a heck of a lot of actual work being done. That is a preparation phase. That is us identifying and planning the physical works before we start doing it. Then we'll head into what is probably going to be the ugliest part of the construction, which is the demolition. That's when a lot of stuff starts disappearing. We start digging big holes in the ground. You'll start to see pipes rock up on site, and a lot more road cones, fences being put up, and those sorts of things. We'll then start doing the three waters work and the utilities work, and that's where we're starting to look at common trenching. At the moment, we've got services across the CBD, but particularly in the Golden Mile, that's a bit of a spaghetti junction where services are just all over the place. What we're trying to do is bring a lot of those services into a common trench so that you know where all your services are, the general corridor of where all your services are. So you'll start to see us do that work. We're working with Wellington Electricity, Chorus, 1NZ, and Wellington Water at the moment for that. Once we're done with the three waters and the utilities, the ground will then get put back together, and then we'll start civil works. This is where you'll start to see concrete being poured. So you'll have your concrete trucks there, and we'll start pouring concrete. We'll start laying in new curbs, and the general skeleton of what the street is going to look like will start to take shape. Then we'll go in with paving and surfacing, so you'll start to see the pavers go down, and it will start to definitely look like this is what the final product may end up looking like. If you head to Kent and Cambridge at the moment, we're around about that sort of space now. That's where we're headed to. From a landscaping perspective, that's typically the last thing that we do. That's the beautification of the area. It's us putting down where the benches are going to be, where the bins are going to be, where the trees are going to be, all that sort of stuff. And that's when we're in the final throes of the construction project. It's usually at that point, it's typically fully usable and fully accessible for anyone who wants to access the location. All right, so I'll talk a little bit about the key risks that we're currently managing in the project. One is disruption. This is going to be a constant risk in the project that we have to manage, and not just the risk of the disruption associated with this project itself. Within the CBD, there's multiple projects happening all over the place, and these projects have a tendency to cumulatively add onto disruption. So whilst we might have the Golden Mile project as a living, breathing project that is under construction, somebody else might start another construction project elsewhere in the CBD, which will create even more disruption. So managing that cumulative disruption is a big part of the risks that we're trying to deal with. And then there's emergency projects. Whilst we can control planned projects, we can't control emergency projects. So this construction will need to be very agile and adaptable to when emergencies occur. And emergencies will be typically the stuff that we've seen in the past when electricity cable blows up or a water pipe bursts and somebody has to get in to do something. And this project might need to scale down for a week or two in order to allow that emergency project to occur. The future funding for water infrastructure is something that I've spoken about. We're working on this at the moment with the water transitions team, and Margot and I have had a meeting or two about this, and we're continuing to have those discussions as to how we manage this in terms of the transition to Metro Water. And then probably the biggest thing for a project of this size and nature in this location is underground services and what's the condition of the ground underneath the surface. A lot of this land is what is referred to in construction as contaminated soils, meaning that it adds a lot of construction costs the more contaminated soil you find, because you have to dispose of it, and that's not cheap. So it is something that we're actively having to manage is what's under the ground. The other thing that you'll be aware of is Wellington's tram lines. It's all tram lines. A lot of these are huge, big chunks of concrete that are under the ground, and that takes a lot of cost as well in terms of managing those if we find those. We have found one. In terms of contracts and commercials, I'd like to take some time right now to share a little bit about this project. And I want to take you back to when the project was still at Let's Get Wellington Moving. And I think it's important that I talk a little bit about the history of the project, and I talk a little bit about what it looked like from the time the business case was completed to where we are now, so that you can fully understand some of the stuff that we've been dealing with. I appreciate that what I'm going to be sharing with you now has probably not been shared with you in the past, but I think it's important for you to understand the context of the stuff that we've been dealing with in order for you to understand where we're at and how we plan to move forward. When the project was brought to this council to lock in the budgets, and I think it was a additional budget request that was requested of the council approved that additional budget request, and that's how we ended up with the 116 mil for implementation and the 139 mil overall for the project. At the time, the project was only 60% complete on its design. So we locked in a budget for this project at 60% design completion. The project then came over to Wellington City Council at the end, I think Christmas 2023 was when we started transitioning it over from Let's Get Wellington Moving into us. And that was around the time that we realized how far off final completed design we were. Over the course of 2024, when the project was fully with Council, we had to quickly ramp up to try and complete that design. By the tail end of 2024, we had completed the design and we'd taken it to 100% design. We then needed to cost that design. So we needed to understand how much will it cost to actually build this 100% design. By February of 25, so February of this year, we had done that costing with our ECI contractor, the contractor that we have on the books. And that costing showed that the design that was designed, the 100% design, was $20 million over budget. We then spent months re-engineering the design and re-looking at the design in order to bring it back into budget. With the contractor in tow, we've managed to re-look at it, identify some of the things that we can deal with through commercial terms, some of the things that we can deal with through re-engineering, and some of the things that we can deal with, such as how we deal with traffic management, how we deal with contaminated soils, etc., those sorts of things, and risk allocation between us and the contractor. We brought the contract back into budget. We brought the project back into budget, and we're now sitting in a space where we've given the final package to the contractor to go away and provide us with their final price. We expect that final price will bring the project back into budget, and we'll be good to sign the contract. At this stage, we are anticipating that the contract, and our current plan is that the contract, all going well, will be signed in November of this year. So I thought that it's important that you understand that context before I explain to you when we're planning to sign the contract, because one of the things that I would like to spend a little bit of time now, if you allow me, considering it's my last time in front of you, if you'll allow me, I'd like to spend a little bit of time on my observations of this project, and hopefully this will help you as you talk about other projects that you have to deal with, as well as this project. And I'll share three of my thoughts that I've had about this project, and I'd like you to reflect back on the context of what I've just explained about bringing this project over and how it's landed us to where it is right now. And the first thing that I want to say is I think it's very important that us, when you're dealing with construction of infrastructure and big-scale infrastructure like this, that you plan slow and build fast. It's really important to plan slow. One of the things that I've looked at is the fact that this project was costed and we locked ourselves into a budget without understanding that we weren't at full design. If the council was aware at that time that what they were locking themselves into was a budget that wasn't fully formed and not fed off all the information, you might have made a different decision at the time when it was presented to you. And I think it's really important that we ensure that we plan our projects really well, and that when something is brought to the council for a decision, that we have all the information that we need in order to make that decision and lock it in. The next thing that I wanted to share with you is that delays cost time, and time is money. And by that, with the fullest of respect from me, I will say that it has not been easy for council officers to run a project like this in the environment where there's a stop-start of you can go, you can stop, you can go, you need to stop. That's been really difficult to do, particularly when we're trying to negotiate commercial terms, and a lot of this happens out in the public. Our contractors are very astute. They know what they're doing, and at times it feels like you're in the boxing ring with one hand tied behind your back and you're facing Mike Tyson because they have such good commercial arms. And that's really difficult to do from a council officer perspective. And then the last thing I wanted to share is just understanding risk. Risk management is huge. If you don't fully understand your risks, you have a real inability to be able to plan for them. And I think one of the things that we've been very careful with both this project and Thornton Key is to fully understand our risks. When you understand your risk, you need to cost your risk, and you need to plan for that risk. And that takes time and it takes money to do, and that's why we've ended up in a position where we aren't able to push forward with a contract earlier or as per the original time frame, that it's just ballooned out, is because as more and more risks come in, such as what if we find a big gaping hole under the ground? Who deals with that? Who pays for that? How do we manage that? That's a risk that you can't just say, hopefully we don't find one. You've got to figure out what you're going to do about it if it does happen. So I thought I'd just share that with you as my last parting thought, and I'm happy to take any questions on this.
Yes, we have a bit of a list. I will start. Do you mind writing the questions down? Thank you. I've got 3 questions. So to be very clear, so for the Courtney Place section of the Golden Mile, how much, excluding the $8 million pipe work, how much is WCC paying just for that part of the project?
Okay, so I don't have the exact numbers on me, but I'll give you round figures, which hopefully will help. The Courtney Place work should, outside of Three Waters, should be in around $42 to $43 million. We'll pay half of that.
So actually to the council, it's more like 26 or so.
Correct.
Plus the $8 million of border work.
Yeah.
Great. So, and to be clear, when this part of the project is done, so will urgent work on water infrastructure.
Correct.
And at a time where unemployment is at an all-time high, and it's pretty quiet on Courtney Place during the day, would you say that this will create lots of jobs in the construction and infrastructure sector?
I can't
Just
answer.
say yes.
I can't answer that fully, but I can give you an example of what it could look like. For Thornton Key, one of the things that our contractor on Thornton Key informed us, because we signed up very similar contracts with the contractor on Thornton Key and the contractor here, was through that project, the contractor was able to bring on 5 or 6 local youth that lived in and around the area as apprentices onto the project. 3 or 4 of them are still with them, have permanent jobs, and have moved on as permanent employees of that contractor. So there is definitely a possibility of encouraging local employment through any of these types of physical works contracts, and it's part of our contract.
Oh, this sounds like a very positive project. Thank you, Brad. Councillor Pennant.
No, I'm not doing that. Thank you for your presentation. So look, obviously the council has faced challenges with managing costs. This is like over 2 years. We're about to go into another briefing over that. So what extra controls do you think your officers, you're not going to be there obviously, but will put in place to manage that? Because we don't want another budget blowout?
I would say, Councillor Pennant, that it comes back to the stuff that I've spoken about. It's having a really firm understanding of your risks and knowing those risks and having a plan for those risks, and not just having a plan, but factoring the cost of those risks. So, for instance, if I keep coming back to the same thing, if we do find a big giant hole in the ground, how much is that going to cost? And ensuring that we have the budget available to manage some of those things as we come across them, and not saying, well, if it does happen, we'll figure out where we're going to get the money from, but actually factoring that into your budgets, that you're going to need to plan for some of that. So I think risk management is key in terms of being able to control the costs of these projects.
The next question, I understand your frustration, but sometimes we haven't all been brought on board with this project. So the bus shelter design has been a really big problem for me. It's brutal down there on a winter's day. What evidence have you got to show that people waiting for bus will have better protection than we do now, where we've got walls on the front, which is brilliant?
So we've done the wind modeling. I'm happy to share with you the actual designs and the details around that wind modeling that gives us comfort around how we've designed this, and that we have some comfort that that this will be a really good solution for people waiting for the bus. So I can share that outside of this meeting.
And just the last question, again, why this project hasn't had my full support. The bus shelters, so they're definitely moving by St James. There is no way that we can keep them, so that we don't. They're actually just they're not actually a proper shelter. They're just a bench. That the only way would be that you'll rip them out, and then if a future council wants to put them back in, they'll have to pay the money to put them back in, and it's $1 million too, just for each shelter.
So the current shelter design, Amy just confirmed for me, I think it is $1 million a shelter.
Yeah, well, we've got $6.5 million that GDUB has approved and done costings on, but that's all of the includes Lambton Quay shelters as well. So they've come down a lot from the 12 million. So it's about half the cost of what they used to be with the current design. So, yeah, but you would be looking, because you'd have to pair them, you'd have to put one in front of St James and Reading. Oh, not Reading, because you've got shelter there, you've got the veranda. But then there is the space provisioning, you've got the cycleway as well. So it would be a redesign.
Yeah. So yes, they're about $500,000 for a bus shelter, and you are correct, Councillor Pennant. They will be removed. Like I've mentioned before, if the council wishes to retain those that bus stop, then it will need a revisit of the traffic resolution that you've approved in terms of changing that. At the moment, though, I will say again that the design has incorporated that this bus stop doesn't exist. If we do, it's not just a simple thing of saying bring back the bus shelter. That will require redesign, which will require more time, which will require more cost.
Sorry, I mean before or after?
Sorry?
So if sorry, you saying this is after the project has been constructed, you'd need to do redesign, or it would require redesign if we wanted to keep the bus shelter?
It would require redesign if you want to keep the bus shelter now.
Okay. Could I go back on the list? Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Brad. Very fulsome briefing. Just can I reconfirm what is the expected life cycle of this investment? 20, 30, 50 years?
It will depend on the different assets in the corridor. Your pavement, which is your road, the road will generally last you 20 years plus. The fact that it's not going to be a high trafficked area with general traffic, it might last a little bit longer. Your concrete work will probably last you about 50 years before it needs renewing. Generally, this type of investment will only be changed when the place is tired again and the city feels like it needs a reinvigoration. Most of these assets are quite long-lasting assets and should be there for the next 20, 30 years, no problem.
Great, thank you, Brad. Just the sequencing, so going back to the how we're working with businesses, but in terms of the construction, will the construction be sequenced, i.e., 50 metres at a time, or will it be rip up the whole of one side and come down the other? Like, what does that look like?
It'll be horses for courses, Deputy Mayor. We will be working with businesses, but we'll to try and understand what best works for them. But at the same time, we need to manage the trade-off of how much that's going to cost the project to do. So there'll be times where we'll take chunks and we'll move in a sequential manner, and there'll be times where we might, due to other constraints like somebody else, there might be an urgent water blowout or something like that there, that we might need to shift and go further down the street and start working further down the street. So we'll take it as it comes, but we'll consistently be working with the businesses in and around the area to make those adjustments. So if you think about Thorn and Quay, most of it was sequential, and we work sequentially, but every now and again we'd have to jump around a little bit in order to keep the costs down and still get the project done.
Great. And final question, just accessibility while the project is going on. So just at the moment, cars are allowed, so will that, for example, will it be one side being worked on so cars maybe can get into loading zones?
Authorized vehicles will be allowed. So that means delivery vehicles will be allowed, people with mobility permits, emergency vehicles, that sort of thing would be allowed through. General traffic would not.
Great, while the construction.
While construction.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. When you discussed about likely other projects, could you just perhaps identify them, or the Wellington City Council ones? Impact.
Oh, that might impact this?
Yeah, there was a sort of, it was one of the first slides that you had, and you talked about other projects. I'm assuming you're talking about this in the CBD.
Yes, correct. So the Wellington City ones that are on the go or scheduled, obviously the water ones. So we've got a few water projects on the go at the moment. We've got Tanakau, we've got the Harbour Quays that'll be going through, cross-city bike connections that'll be happening. All of these, when I talk about cumulative impacts to disruption, they might not be in the vicinity of this project, but because the city operates as a network, they will have a cumulative impact on disruption. But in addition to the Wellington City ones, there are a lot of developers working in the city, and generally, even when they're working on their property, they take lanes of traffic out in order to get a big crane in and deliver HVACs and that sort of thing. So all of those things do have a part to play as well.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to provide, one of the big things that you've emphasized is risk management. Have you got an updated risk matrix around this project? Because I'm looking for that bit of a heat map. What's the likelihood and what are the mitigations? I know you won't have it on you, but I'd be really keen to see that.
That's been managed at a board level, and I've just got the nod from Jenny. Yeah, we'll be happy to release that to you.
Okay, that's good. And we're looking at the end date of 2029 for this piece. Is that whereabouts in 2029? So, because essentially looks like it's another 4 years away for completion.
Potentially, yeah. It is significant work. So if you think about, again, I'll come back to Thorn and Quay because it's the most recent activity that we've seen that's slightly like the Golden Mile. That took us about 1.5 to 2 years to complete physical construction. We replaced no pipes in that time. We didn't work with electricity providers and fiber networks and that sort of thing. That's what we're doing in this environment. If you think about Queens Drive in Auckland, that took about 1 year and a bit worth of construction, also fully surface level, nothing underground. 4 years is what you get when you want to dig once and you want to replace your pipes and you want to move all your services and you want to get out of there. It does take time. Yeah, 4 years is...
So is there enough money in the budget to do that? Because, this is based on the same sort of budgeting process that Thornton Quay had, and you've just said we didn't replace the pipes, which we know is an issue, and the electrical side. So given that you're going to take, and it's a very similar length, is it but taking at least twice as long? So how are we not factored in more, potentially more money?
Because we don't pay for the electricity cables and the work that's actually happening under the ground. We're working with the service providers. They need to pay for that. It's their services, it's their assets. So whilst we enable them to be able to do that while we're doing this work, we don't have to pay for it. If they find something that's going to cost more to move an electricity cable, that's on them. It's not on us.
Thank you. I'll go back on the list. Thank you.
Councillor Chung.
Great, thanks, Brad. Much appreciated. I have 4 questions, so I'm happy to go on the list if there's not enough time. First question, similar to Councillor Pannett's question regarding the bus shelters. It seems to me that that design isn't sheltering anyone from the wind, and there is wind down there, and I've sat there myself. And the thing I want to ask about it is that and we didn't see what the seating was like. Now, one of the issues that we've actually got at the moment down there is people rough sleeping inside the bus shelter, so people can't go into those shelters. What are we doing anything to allow for this or to rectify that?
Yes. So the bus shelters have been through what is called CPTED design, which is crime prevention through the design. And a lot of the reasoning why the shelters are currently so clear is so that you can see into them. And that's part of it. Part of it is that design to ensure that it is a usable, nice space for people who are wanting to use the bus, and that we get rid of some of the unwanted activity that happens in bus shelters typically.
Through you, Madam Chair, just quickly, Brad, can we go back to that earlier point about the 4 years of disruption? I don't want Councillor Calvert to be to misunderstand in terms of the actual disruption to the Courtney Place area.
Yeah, so essentially what we're looking at is from 2026, we wouldn't actually have started construction in terms of proper physical works construction. That starts around middle of 2026, that we start physical works construction. We then continue with that through till about 2028, and we do the final road sealing around the end of that in 2029. So all up, you're looking at 3 years worth of disruption in total that you're facing there. Noting that every construction period, so the little Christmas tree there is every Christmas period, we do have the brownout that we need to factor in, which is shutting down construction, minimizing the space in order to allow businesses to be able to ride through that busy period.
Yep.
So it is 3 years, not 4 years, you're right.
Okay, so
2026 to 2029 is 3 years.
Okay, we've got a lot of questions, so if we could try, totally. If we could try to keep the questions shorter and actually the answers a bit more efficient too, please.
Yes.
Go, Ray.
So trying to understand the seating on the bus shelters again. What the image that we showed there, we showed the T on the top, so that's a shelter for rain coming down, but for wind and rain coming through, what you're saying that we've done some modelling on the wind and rain, so how do we protect the people from getting soaked with rain sort of coming horizontally?
Sideways rain. So sideways rain, we've got the fins on either end, which are see-through, so it might not have shown up that well on the picture, but there are partitions on the edges of the shelter that protect you from the sideways rain.
Okay, that's great, thanks. That's all about shelters. ECI, early contractor involvement. Now, is this contractor at an advantage? Like, are we going to tender this work, or do they get this work automatically because they've actually been involved in the design and sort of working on it? So, and how does that affect our costing? And do they are they in a preferential or privileged position because they know the detail, and any other contractor would find it more difficult to come in?
Correct. An ECI contract, when you sign up a contractor for an ECI contract, generally you're signing them up to help you through the design process, and then they get given the physical works construction as well. There's no obligation for us to give them the physical works construction, but because they've been with us so long through this process, they've worked on re-engineering, value engineering, making sure that it is deliverable for the cost involved in it. The contractor is essentially brought on board with a statement of good faith. We can go outside, we can look at another contractor, but the likelihood of us doing that and them providing us a cheaper cost than the current contractor involved in the project is unlikely.
Oh, yeah, okay, thanks. You talk about contaminated soil, what we're actually finding under there. So,
Sorry, Ray, you've actually asked 3 questions, so I'm going to put you on the list.
Okay,
Thank
yep.
you. Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, my question was around that point that you, the first point that you made, the plan slow and build fast. And I was wondering if you could briefly describe what work has gone in with this project to move more of the risk away from council into a more, I guess, sort of fixed price model than maybe we would do on other projects, and yeah, how beneficial that could be for us.
Yeah, so the current Kenton Cambridge project, or the work package 1, is a complete fixed price model. Fixed price is not always the best model to use because whilst you might fix your price and you have certainty with the price, the contractor doesn't have certainty that they're going to make money in case something happens. And this is why I refer to risk management. What the contractor will end up doing is pricing the risk that they're wearing by giving you a fixed price. So you might end up paying $10 million for something that you could have got done for $5 million. So when we start looking at that plan slow, build fast perspective, it's really around that risk management. It's fully understanding your risks and having honest conversations with the contractors around who's wearing what risk and costing that risk and ensuring that both parties are comfortable that you're going to wear that risk and you build that into your price. And this is risk that the council's going to wear because we'll keep money in our contingency to deal with that risk if it does manifest. So that plan slow, build fast, that's the type of thing that we've been looking at, is if it is contaminated soil risk, who's wearing that risk and who pays for that risk and who's holding the money to deal with that risk if it does, when it does manifest, because it probably will.
So just around that, I guess, in terms of the risk management approach, when you're looking at who shoulders the risk, are you kind of undertaking analysis about who has the best mechanisms to, I guess, mitigate that risk? Because I'm guessing with, contaminated soil, it's just there or it's not.
Yeah.
But if it's something about a cost escalation, then perhaps, the contractor is in a better place to look at supply chain constraints and things than we would be.
That's 100% it.
Okay,
That's
cool.
it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Brad. I've just got one question actually about the trenching, which strikes me as massively overdue. In fact, I'm kind of gobsmacked that it doesn't already exist. But are we going to charge Wellington Electricity, Chorus, and Wellington Water for use of the trench that we're obviously building at our expense? And if so, if not, why not?
Okay. So the fact is that when we're having these agreements with these service providers, we are agreeing the cost allocation with the service providers on things. The fact that we are providing a trench for them, we may then ask them to pay for that trench. Obviously, they'll need to agree on that. If they don't agree, then that then puts us into a situation where we've got to renegotiate and understand what they're willing to pay for. So yes, it is something that we are including in our agreements with them. We're working on legal agreements with them so that they can't, extricate themselves out of it. So it is quite complicated in negotiating these things, but it is one of the things that we are looking at dealing with.
Councillor McNulty.
Thanks, Brad. Sorry, I've got a cold, so hopefully I'm coherent enough. So taking by your answers to Councillor Rogers' questions, we're not going to have a fixed price contract when it comes back from the contractor on this one?
At this stage, no. We're not looking at fixed pricing the entire contract for this one. We'll fix price certain elements of it where we feel like we cannot afford to take risk as an organization, and the contractor's then been asked to wear that risk and price that risk into their fixed model. But the entire package won't be a fixed price package. There'll be certain aspects where we feel like we have a really good chance of making some savings, and so we wouldn't necessarily want to fix price that.
Okay, and so we have contingency if there are overruns on the areas that aren't fixed price, and if we exceed those contingencies, would that then mean coming back to council for a decision on any additional funding?
Correct, Councillor. If we end up in a situation where we start to forecast that we're not going to be able to bring the project back within the budget that's been allocated, and by this I mean the total budget that's been allocated, then we would need to come back to council for a decision. Before we do that, we would be looking at making changes within the project scope without removing benefits in order to still try and bring it within budget. And we do have contingency within us that we can, within the current allocation, that we can use, and it's only when we start dipping into that contingency and using that contingency that we'll start to think about flagging stuff to council that that we're now using contingency money to deal with the risk.
Thank you. Last one. I guess this is for the next briefing, but I'd like to understand how we'll be monitoring whether we get into that contingency area nice and early, so we avoid what the next briefing's topic is we've exceeded that. So how are we going to build in a risk management model or a early notification that if we are going to head towards that direction, that there's a well signposted awareness?
Yeah, I think, Councillor, that's something that the council would need to request of officers in terms of how the board is delegated to manage with this project. And if the council wants to set a threshold for board reporting back to the council, then it can do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Free.
Thank you. I guess I'm going back to some of the Mayor's line of questioning. If we were not to do the project for some reason, would it be likely that the water upgrades would cost more? And if so, by what sort of quantum?
I can't really give you a quantum, Councillor, but with all projects, with all infrastructure projects, the longer you wait to do the project, it does generally cost more. I've not in my career seen an infrastructure project that was deferred that came in cheaper when we eventually did it.
I guess my line of thought is, are there efficiencies, significant efficiencies to doing the water upgrades with this other project that mean that actually this is a cost-effective way of doing some water upgrades, needed water upgrades?
100%, Councillor. The fact is that across the continuum, when you start thinking about the utility providers, the water infrastructure, and the actual roadworks, and you think about the cost of traffic management these days, doing 5 or 6 separate projects and paying for traffic management 5 or 6 separate times is definitely going to cost you more than doing it all at once. So disruption will be high, but this is probably the most cost-effective way of doing all of this.
Thank you. Oh, and Brad, you're going to be such a loss, but congratulations again.
Councillor Randall.
In terms, so I just want to look at the cost again, because you talk about certainty. We often talk about the likelihood or what level of certainty the budget is really based around, the cost estimate that you outlined, in terms of like P50, P80, P95. You've got a P95 cost on the overall project. So what is, in terms of this work package 2, Courtenay Place, what is your estimate of the certainty of the estimate that we're working to? It's like a P80 or something.
That's a P80. The P80 is the cost estimate that we're looking at for the implementation budget, and then the P95 takes us up to that 95% certainty level.
And in terms of the budget, if it did go over, there is also that 9 million contingency, which is in the budget that could be drawn upon.
Correct.
Okay. You've costed and designed the whole project. That means you've costed and designed the whole project right through to Lambton Quay.
Incorrect. We've designed the entire project. We haven't costed the Lambton Quay portion fully yet. We've costed the Courtenay Place portion, and we're relatively comfortable with the Courtenay Place portion. The Lambton Quay portion is still a work in progress. We haven't fully costed it yet.
Okay, so what status is that design and costing at?
I'll have to double check and come back to you, Councillor.
And lastly, a little more technical on the bus stops. Just noticing on the design, I'm sure if you could move to the map. So I noticed in terms of the eastbound buses, they're going to continue to go through Courtenay Place and stop at the current stops, roughly.
Yeah.
But the westbound ones are going to go around and stop on Wayfield Street. But is there any stop that's actually near the intersection of Courtenay Place and Cambridge Terrace?
We haven't finalized the actual bus stops yet. That's still a work in progress. We're getting really close to it at the moment. Amy might have a bit more detail on that, but I don't think that we've actually finalized exactly where the bus stops are going to be. Amy, do you?
Yeah, so for the diversion, we're looking at a bus stop on Cambridge Terrace, kind of between Courtney Place and Wakefield, but nearer the end of Wakefield on the left-hand side. And then we're looking at a bus stop in front of the Lanes Bowling as well. So these actually match the locations of the Harbour Quays project workstream as well.
Okay, so just because there's no bus stop on the map on Cambridge Terrace doesn't mean there's not going to be one. It's just that you don't know exactly where it is yet.
Exactly.
Yep, we've got.
Councillor Young.
First of all, I've got a stiff lip because I've been to the dentist, so I might sound a bit odd, unusually. Construction's paused December, so when does it restart?
So our brownout period in the city generally runs from the 1st of December to the end of December, and that allows for businesses and retailers to be able to deal with the busy Christmas period and a little bit post. But we are sometimes flexible with that, but usually it's 1st to the end of December. That's a brownout period.
So just going back to this question of bus shelters and bus stops, when we talk about a bus shelter at the St James, etc., are we actually talking about the bus stop or just a design of the bus shelter? Because there's plenty of canopy cover there, but we need to have the bus stop there.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the bus stop.
I thought so. Yeah. So, and now coming on to another one associated with it. At the crossing at the moment by the Embassy Theatre going across to Courtney Place, that's going to be moved further along Kent Terrace, where there is absolutely no shelter. And so Embassy Theatre often has big crowds. The film festival, for example, starts tonight. Then you have the I've forgotten what it's called. Is it U3? Something like that, anyway. So big crowds in there. So they, at the moment, have the shelter of the Embassy Theatre and the cafes and stuff. And so Councillor Panish and I have been told that there is no plan to have a bus shelter at the new crossing, new pedestrian crossing.
Correct. As I mentioned before, Councillor, that was never factored into the design of this project. When the design was approved and locked down, this project never factored in the shelter there. Like I mentioned previously, we can look at it outside of the Golden Mile project, but we wouldn't be able to factor it into the Golden Mile project because it was never factored in the first place.
So we're just talking about a bus shelter. I mean, we're not talking about traffic diversions, just literally, even those converted porta cabin things are just shelter because it is windswept, it's cold. Southerly you get it, and northerly you get it, and you've got two councillors here who use that crossing all the time. Soon one of them to be a councillor emeritus. Hopefully not both of us.
Correct, Councillor. I'll come back to one of the things that I mentioned in my wrap up of this presentation, which is delays cost time and money, and even with small minor changes to design, they tend to accumulate and add up. So I'm happy to talk about this outside of this, but
we should get a men's shed involved for them to knock something up. Thank you, Brad.
Councillor Abdurrahman.
Well, I think my question was just asked, but since this is the last time we're going to see you, brother, I just want to say, acknowledging how much I enjoyed working with you. You are very smart and confident and fearless, and I really, really wish you all the best. For this council also, we are losing only one of the only engineer actually at manager level. We have so many managers in this council. He was the only engineer, and we are losing him. Not only that, he was the only brown person to that level. I just want to note that. Wish you all the best. Good luck.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, we are getting to round 2 of the questions, so we'll just kind of keep them, okay, when we were first told about this, well, not first told about this project, maybe over a year ago, we were told with the Courtney Place section, when it was under construction, it would be done block by block. I was just a little bit confused by the slide. Is that still the case? as opposed to taking out the entire Courtney Place at the same time?
So, correct. So we will be doing block by block. I think what you're talking about is this.
Because it was above Tory, below Tory, and just tell me the things.
So essentially what we'll be looking at is shutting down lanes. So we'll take the north side and then the south side, but we won't take the entire north side lane out. We'll take it block by block by block, and then we'll shift to the south. Now, that is the in-principle way of doing the construction, but within that, there might be nuances of where we jump around a little bit in order to manage stuff.
Cool, thank you. Councillor Pennant.
Thank you. Just the pedestrian access, there's actually quite a few pedestrian access things, like with the new crossing and making sure that pedestrians are safe with the cycleway. Have you done some safety audits for pedestrians right along that block?
Yes. The safe system assessment has covered the entire route.
Okay, so maybe I could take that offline, thank you. And so just with the contract, so it hasn't been signed, so a future council could stop it, just to be for absolute clarity?
Council can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, and instruct us to do anything. And yes, that's always a possibility that the council could make a decision to stop the project.
Thanks. And just last question around the bus capacity. So just with there will be enough capacity for all the buses to go through with this alternative route. And can you just remind me when we were starting to think about Harbour Quays, just so that we're not getting lots of bus jamming?
Yes, so this project is dovetailing a lot with Harbour Quays. This project team, as well as the Harbour Quays project team, work really closely together. They actually co-locate in council offices a lot of the time, and so we're working very much with them to ensure that both projects, there's synergies between the two projects, that they work hand in hand.
Councillor Calvin.
Thank you. When you were looking at value re-engineering down into the current budget, was there some aspects that you thought we could cut out, but because you come within budget, you didn't need to do them? Because I'm just wondering whether we need to look at some other value engineering if potentially this budget does go well over.
Councillor, finding $20 million was pretty hard. I don't think that we had stuff left over after we did all that work to say that there's more that we've left on the table. I think any further efficiencies and costs that we need to find would be done through how we plan the construction and through the actual construction. It's not going to be through the design and engineering. I think we've done as much as we can there.
Okay, this might be more for Liam rather than you, Brad. But what we're hearing is a big aspect around risk management and risk governance, and I would like to understand how this is now factoring in some of these learnings or lessons learned, not into all our projects, but also our project management generally, but also our audit and risk committee, because obviously there's things that definitely need to improve here. And so I'm really looking to see what advice is going to come from officers in terms of making sure that we bring this information up and we lift the game around risk management.
Thanks, Councillor. My observations would be I'm on the board of Golden Mile. I think the risk management aspect, what Brad's been speaking about, we see that in action. We also have a number of external board appointments to the Golden Mile project, and it's the same that applies for some of these bigger projects, one of which we'll be talking about after this. ELT have a clear eye on risk. We have, outside of our corporate risk, but our project risk. We have a major projects report that comes, I believe, quarterly, even monthly. I'll hand it to Andrea to talk to the audit and risk aspect as well, because she has her eyes over the assurance component. But I mean, Brad's been highlighting to you just the overall focus this organisation has had on risk for a number of years now, and the external advice we bring in to help us and support us for our capability and capacity. But it is a journey, but I'll let Andrea talk to you.
Yeah, we are focused heavily on updating our risk management framework, and I'm not sure you were there, Councillor, but we held a workshop recently with all councillors to be able to input into that refresh, and that will be brought back to the Audit and Risk Committee. And there was some specific conversation around looking at the risk of the affordability and the project management of many of these types of projects. So that is certainly on the radar of the Audit and Risk Committee and very much built into its program going forward. And the second element of that, I guess, in building on what Liam has said, with a number of projects and as a result of the feedback that we have had from you, we have built into papers such as the one that was done for HUP2 in talking about what is the level of reporting that we bring back to you as the governors of the council, so that we can provide you with regular updates. So that is a discipline that has been considered and thought about as a result of projects that we are bringing on a regular basis.
Thank you. And yes, I did give a lot of feedback back, written feedback for that workshop we had. I will request, though, from officers is a copy of the last governance papers for this project. You don't have to give it to me now, but I would like to see them. Thank you.
We've got last questions from Councillor Chung, and then we'll wrap up so we can have a bit of a morning tea before the next big briefing. Councillor Chung.
Yep, great, thanks. Brad, I wanted to ask you a bit about the contaminated soil that you're actually finding under the Courtney Place area. Now, you're talking about the tram tracks and concrete, and I assume the concrete holding the tram tracks up. Wouldn't this have been very close to the surface? And so why is that all being discovered underneath when you're digging under there now?
Not always very close to the surface, but even if the top of the tram tracks is very close to the surface, typically within the city, the buried depth at which stuff needs to be buried is about 0.5 meter. So the tram tracks will be about 0.5 meter underneath the surface. So it does take a bit of digging to get to them. And the issue around the tram tracks is the fact that they are quite chunky. So just because you find one, it's not just a piece of concrete, it's quite a big chunky piece of concrete that's in there.
Okay, thanks. And the other one was also on contamination, is that the void that you actually found under there, what's the implication of this, and like why is it actually there? Would it be possibly because of water subsidence or something under there that it actually created that void, or because it wouldn't have been built deliberately, would it?
Our current investigations lead us to believe that it's just a natural occurrence because of the environment that we're in. It is an hour, and generally what we see in the geographical topology of the space in the CBD is that there is general subsidence that occurs because of the reclaimed nature of the land and all of that. So it is just a geographical feature that we would expect to find in pockets of the Golden Mile.
Okay, so there wouldn't be any danger to the buildings above at all?
I would suggest that it's really difficult to say, Councillor. I mean, I would suggest that this is a geographical feature of the CBD and that part of the CBD, and is a risk that has probably been around for 150 years.
Okay. So no risk of it being a sinkhole or a sinkhole coming up?
We still get sinkholes coming up in the CBD, but we generally manage them well when they do pitch up. This isn't a sinkhole, and we haven't had one in quite a few years now.
Great, thank you.
That brings us to the end of our briefing. Really want to thank you, Brad, for that information. Very detailed, and congratulations on your final briefing with Council.
Thank you.
We'll come back at 11 for the next briefing.